So thanks for having me, and I'm thrilled to be here. We're going to cover a lot of ground, and it's going to be fun. I prepared something for today, and then I shared it with Christine and Ben, and they said that's not going to work. So we pivoted, and they haven't seen what I'm going to show, and nor has anyone else. So I've talked to a lot of audiences before, but I can tell you, coming back to Fort Lewis and presenting back to the students is way more stressful than an audience of 10,000. Just from what this place means. And Evan, if you wouldn't mind if I get the timer going, I'll just make sure I'm staying on track, because I will definitely not. Question for you guys. We're going to run, this is for you, and I'm going to share some stories along the way. But I have an agenda, and that is to bring some design into your mindset. You might not think of yourself as a designer. I didn't think of myself as a designer. And the trip through California and then the career, I came across this thing called design thinking, and it unlocked my life and the world, and I've seen it unlock a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's worlds. And I wish there was a D school here at Fort Lewis College, but since there's not, you got me, so sorry about that, but we'll do the best we can. The first thing I'd love for you all to do is actually project back at me things that you wish were different about the world. So these things that you might be thinking about, that you might want to be involved in some way. I think this especially applies to students, but most adults I talk to still don't know what they're doing either, and that would include me, as we sort of navigate our careers and our lives. So anything you'd like to share on things you'd like to see different in the world? Just blurt them out, don't be shy. I've talked to a lot of students, and they're super shy, and then they warm up, but the next one will really get you talking. But if you guys could share a few what if X? Less division. What if there was less division? What else? World hunger, sure. Why not? Let's take it. Yeah. What else? Less social media. It's a good one. We're going to cover some of that today. Some scary insights on the inside of that world. Yeah, other ones. Say it again. What if we had less fear of scarcity, or take on that topic? Any others on what ifs? Okay, let's go to the next one then. Let's complain for a few minutes. So most audiences are really good at this, so I'd love for you guys to not disappoint. And I'd love to, again, whether it's societal or campus or curriculum or traffic, whatever it may be, although I don't think that's your biggest problem relative to where I come from. But please, what are some complaints? In fact, what I'd love you to do is huddle with someone next to you and just complain for a minute. Now, this is a summary of the talk today, so if you guys just need the sort of Cliff Notes version, this is it. And this is a disclaimer. There's a strong reason I have no idea what I'm talking about, so I just want the legalese in here. If you take any of this advice, it's at your own discretion. But I'm going to talk about the design process. And the design process starts with empathy, defining the problem, generating a bunch of ideas, prototyping those ideas, testing the ideas, and then implementing them. As far as what you put at the front end of that, you could put your weekend, world hunger, future of beer, future of luxury, future of higher education, future of egg production. How do we make carbs less bloaty? Anything can be put in the upside of the process. That's not to oversell design thinking, but in my experience in the world, it's become a religion, and I've seen the world change for good and for bad because of it, because everyone's using this skill set, and they're using it to create addictive social media. They're also using it to create the most powerful nonprofits we've ever seen. So I'm going to take you through the process. My pitch to you today is that I think you can use it to design your life. I also think you can use it to design your career. I think you can design companies and anything you'd like. So I'm going to take you through a few reasons why I believe that and some things that have happened since coming out of FLC. The breakthrough comes between your complaints and your what ifs. So a lot of people criticize innovation because, oh, isn't it cool to just think like freeform, out of the box, do anything you want. The truth is that's BS. What you need is the constraint to ground you. I'll use an old IDEO project from Iceland. And the Iceland country, after the 2008 financial crisis, had a huge economic problem, which is we don't have a vibrant economy. What are our constraints? Not very many people live in Iceland. It's dark half the year, it's cold, and it's far away. Those are heavy constraints when you're trying to grow an economy. What might you do with the constraint to lead to a question? How might we is a common question. What if's a common question. How might Iceland be the economic capital using its constraints? What if Iceland was the special effects capital of the world because it's dark half the year? What if it was the world's largest sleep study center? What if it was the stargazing center of the world, right? So you're using the constraint to leap into a really big idea, but you don't judge the idea phase. That's what prototyping is for. It's really easy to come up with ideas and criticize them at the same time you're coming up with the idea. So we'll think about, what if we had a life design center here on the Fort Lewis College campus? Turns out you guys are working on that. Thank you, Brett. However, that might feel like, as we're describing it, you might think like, well, how are we going to get accreditation for that? It's too early to be thinking that way. You've got to take it too far and then use a constraint to bring it back in. And that was demonstrated poignantly this morning with the nursing program as they're thinking about how will we integrate native thinking and native care models into a nursing program. That's an awesome conversation. And they're pushing it right now. They're pushing it too far. What they'll ultimately implement will be something more conservative. So this is the idea of taking that idea too far. Your end solution won't be that crazy end solution. What if the Fort Lewis College cycling team gave free scholarships to 10,000 people? Too far, right? But what might we think? I heard one today around a student that wants to do physical therapy but live van life. That's tricky. So you have to start thinking like, how would you do that? How would you be nomadic? The creativity might take you, well, what if you treated people and dogs? Right? Like, okay, that's weird. But maybe, I don't know, maybe. So you have to push that far, and often in a brainstorm, if people start laughing, it's a really good sign, because the definition of humor are two things that are put together that aren't normally put together. That's what makes you laugh. That's what makes it funny. So if people are laughing in a brainstorm, it's a really good sign, because you're pushing it. So you can talk about what's your weekend look like, or what's your next month look like, or what's your next year look like. But here's the big thing. Tons of people have ideas. There's a bunch of ideas in this room. There's a bunch of doers in this room. But most people don't take the first step and make the shitty first draft. Most companies start this way. If you talk to the companies, I forgot to do one thing, so let's do it really quick. Take your phone out, unlock your phone, and hand it to the person next to you. Now, just for a second, how did that feel? How does that feel? Weird and wrong. Okay, go ahead and hand the phones back. So I have to credit, and don't hate me for this, but I'll credit Joe Gebbia and Brian Chesky, who started Airbnb. And they use that example of how would we get people to come into the most intimate parts of somebody else's life, their bathroom, their living room. And the purity of Airbnb was actually pretty honest and awesome, which was, we can't make our rent, we have an air mattress, there's a conference coming in town, I wonder if people would pay us a few bucks to stay on our floor. That's the origin story of the company. It pivots, and it's the organization that we know now. And as I described earlier today, that has two polar opposite feelings depending on where you live and your relationship with a company like that. The next thing we do in the design process, you map the journey. So what's it look like? Dave's done an incredible job in hosting me here this week. You should see the agenda, it's nuts. But it was thought out, every piece of the journey, from the airport to the stay to who we're meeting and how the day's designed is a journey. And people don't think this way about themselves. They don't think about the journey. One of the coolest applications of design thinking is designing the ultimate experience for somebody that you love. Think about what matters to them and design the ultimate gift or the ultimate day. If you guys just take away that from today and you do that, you're going to be blown away at what comes back at you. And what will come at you are, you have to use empathy skills, what would matter to my friend Chad, and what's he do, what really makes him tick. And then if I design the ultimate day, it's going to show up in spades in terms of how relatable that is and how emotional that can be and how thoughtful that can be. So using that empathy to design experiences, this one is the maternity experience on what mothers go through when they have a baby. We talk to a lot of mothers. Turns out 30 days after they have a baby, everyone drops you. Free food stops coming from your buddies. Your parents are like, you've got this. And mom's been officially dropped. And now it's all about baby, 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 baby. And in fact, the healthcare system calls this discharge, which is funny and so ironic. But what we did is we started recording the day the baby was born by the spouse that was there or the partner that was there. Usually, when somebody has a baby, someone else is there. So we said, capture this day. We want to know what it looked like, tastes like, felt like. What are you proud of? What was the weather like? They record the day, and we sent it to mom 30 days after the baby was born. And we measured the concept by, did it make her cry? And she cried. 9 times out of 10. By someone else just espousing what happened that day and what it was like. So this is how it'll feel like to be in that process, because it's muddy as you go through it. So the design process is not a linear process. You don't know what the finish is. If someone told me at Fort Lewis College, a bicycle is going to take you through parts of life and experiences that will take you around the world, will introduce you to people that you never thought you would know, I wouldn't have believed them. I wouldn't have believed the credit. This is how it started for me. I was a dishwasher at Denny's. Then things started looking a lot better because I got a job at the Olive Garden. Pretty sweet. And here in town, in Durango, UPS took a risk on me, and we delivered packages in the summer. The best part was meeting the guys at the airport because my packages were always late, and I'd have to drive out to the airport to deliver the overnights that I didn't get back in time. And I started asking those guys, hey, where do you fly? They go, we stop in Grand Junction, then we go to Denver. Could I ever jump a ride? Can I get a ride with you? I said, sure. You can hop in for a 6-pack. This was pre-9/11. Needless to say, we had a pretty good time flying that plane back and forth. Don't tell anybody. But really interesting experience there. And taught skiing at Winter Park in Purgatory, trying to piece together what would it be like to be in school and still do things that you loved. From there, went to Specialized, and then IDEO, where I learned design thinking and didn't know that you could study design thinking. I didn't know that was a thing. And then got really interested in healthcare. It's not surprising to me because, really what Specialized was doing was trying to grow the world's number of heartbeats, and that was all about getting people to push really hard. And IDEO was about food projects, et cetera. And then One Medical was about reimagining primary care. One Medical was just bought by Amazon. And then now Sutter Health is a 3 million patient nonprofit in Northern California treating the elite of Silicon Valley and the poorest rural zip codes, some in the nation. So how do you reimagine healthcare from the inside out? So this is California. California is what it is. The Western world, right or wrong, is shaped out of this region. And it's really interesting, the people you meet and the way that they work and what they're thinking about is really fascinating. And I'm going to tell you a few of those stories as we go. Here's a couple of projects I just wanted to share with you related to design thinking. And one was really heavy. This was the first project we ever did at Sutter, which is, what if we reimagined end-of-life care and how people die? The reason this is an important topic is the US medical system is designed to keep people alive at all costs. And it costs this country a tremendous amount of money to keep people going for a few more days, a few more weeks, but not much time at all. And that's the medical oath. That's what people sign up for in the profession. And we found that the end-of-life experience, people don't die with dignity. They haven't filled out advanced care directives. And how would you think about this? This is my friend BJ Miller. In college, he stepped on a commuter train, was just messing around, just like we did in Durango. He jumped on a commuter train. He had a watch on. The train was an electric train. It arced and caught his watch and blew off both of his legs and his arm. From that point forward, he became a palliative care physician, and he's one of the most compassionate people I've ever met and smartest people I've ever known, really thinking about the end-of-life experience. He wrote a great book called The Guide to Dying, and it's really good. In fact, I have to correct you on the title. I'll get the title to you guys. But he's got a great book out that we can get back to you guys. So this project starts. And the first thing we did is we just listened to stories from around the world. How do people in the East think about death versus the West? And we came across a student. In fact, students came up with the strongest concepts. We gave away 2 prizes on this project. And one was to a woman named Yoko Sen. And this photo was taken, it's actually a Native American patient in the system whose dying wish was to die under the stars, not in a hospital. So nurses have incredible intuition. They know when the end's coming before any monitor tells them that. And so they were able to put this gentleman outside where he was able to die with dignity the way that he wanted. But Yoko Sen had another insight, which was your last sense to go is your sense of hearing. And she said, people die hearing some horrific things. It's usually monitors and beepers and things like that. So she started taking end-of-life sound requests. And people can submit what their last sound should be. And she's been doing this across different hospital systems. And the clinical minds, and some of you might be in healthcare, will ask us a question like, what the hell does that have to do with healthcare delivery? Turns out, kind of everything. Because people need to fill out, maybe you haven't done it, your advanced care directive, your power of attorney, your wishes. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you not want to be resuscitated? And none of us want to think about that. But we might think music's cool. So if someone says, hey, what's the last sound you want to hear? That actually might be the hook to get you in to do all the other things. So the second concept that came out of that is called vicarious. And vicarious, the way this works is people die with wishes. They do things, they didn't get to things that they wanted to. And we have a mental health crisis in this country, and we have a bunch of young people that are seeking purpose. And they may want to do an adventure, but they might not really have an excuse or the nudge to do it. So the way vicarious works is people's dying wish can be picked up by someone else and fulfilled by someone else. So if someone says, I really wanted to go down the Grand Canyon and I never was able to do it, someone could do that at Fort Lewis College, pipe it back to the patient and tell them, what's the experience like? Here's what it feels like. When we prototyped this concept, there was an issue. People would die before the wish was fulfilled. So the pivot there was to make it a tribute to the person, and it might have been by a family member or someone else. This is a concept that still needs to come to life. If there's a student at FLC who wants to do it, it's up for grabs. Someone needs to make this company. This could be a very successful company. What if we created change through kids? Had a chance to meet this character, Jamie Oliver. He's a British chef. He's pretty famous over there and semi-famous here. And he came to the US to start a food revolution. And what we were able to do with Jamie is we found, we started teaching adults how to cook through their workplace. And it was fascinating. If you taught them one meal and they look cool in that meal, then they would learn another meal. But what was more compelling than that was to build a truck, take it around, and teach kids how to cook out of the truck. So through the Boys and Girls Club, Jamie taught over 10,000 kids how to cook one meal. And they would go home to their parents who never cooked a meal in their life, and they would make the meal for their parents. And then they would show their parents, this is how I made it. And so they were the heroes of the family. You guys have kids. Your kids love to be the hero, right? And then what would happen is that would perpetuate, and the kids would start asking, what's in this food that I'm eating? Where does it come from, and what is it? And so they were more curious about food, and then we'd bring the family into the equation. So cool project, really pivoting what we think about. By the way, you can change the country's health profile by doing this. When we talk about social determinants of health, this is really what we're talking about. What if you knew your genetic gift? We use genetics right now to tell you how you're going to die. That's not very fun. So we teamed up with Genentech. This is David Burke, singer of the Talking Heads, with his daughter at the TED conference. And we had people swab their cheek. We sent it to the lab. We had their genetic profile back the next day. And then we mapped their genetics to notes and music. So when people put on these headphones, they heard their own specific genetic code, and that was uniquely theirs. And we told people like David Byrne, hey, when you eat asparagus, your urine doesn't smell. Check it out. Turns out that's a genetic thing. Your sensitivity to caffeine is way higher than the average person. And by the way, you have the sprinter's gene, so if you don't have a pair of shoes, you should go get some because you can run pretty fast. So instead of inverting the here are the ways you're going to die, we looked at here's how we could make genetics far more interesting. What if we could merge passion with impact? The one thing I loved about California more than anything was the ocean. And leave it to entrepreneurs and leaders is at Specialized during lunch, we try to teach ourselves how to kite surf. This was long ago and it was super dangerous. But really got pulled into that whole world. And I'll tell you how the passion then starts to merge. The bicycle one was obvious. It was Specialized, of course. And then coincidentally, the person that I worked for at IDEO, of course, he was really into cycling. And then other people that you met were into cycling. And turns out that's how a lot of the conversation started. And so kite surfing hits the scene. And
it's an incredible vehicle for just experiencing the world.
So this is Robbie Nash in Hawaii.
Never experience any other way.
And then on this small stretch of Maui is where a lot of the kiting started. But an entrepreneur VC teams up with Susie Mai, who was a professional kite surfer, and his name was Bill Tai. And they came up with this concept called Mai Tai. And at Mai Tai, what they do is TED Talks in the morning, kite surfing in the afternoon, discussion at night. Several companies have started because of this. And then the sport keeps evolving too. So you see, here's a foil. And now it's all about foiling. So now we're all foiling. For those in Durango, if you want to know what foiling feels like, it feels like you're skiing on 3 feet of powder. It's awesome. It's so fun. And it's a lot safer than kiting, and we're seeing more women and kids come in. But guess what happens? In the parking lot, everyone asks, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? If anyone here has an idea that you want funding on, come with me. We're going to go foiling, and I'm going to introduce you to some people. Because those are two overlaps of passion and people. Is there privilege written all over that? You better believe there is. That's full of privilege. That's full of access to entry. But if you can get there and you can cobble together some used equipment the same way that Chad is on the cycling team, there's a through line in there. It's not reserved for a specific set of people. So we're seeing this now in California on teaching underserved kids how to surf and really looking at these outdoor pursuits similar to the currency of Durango to get people experiencing the world. And we're finally proving that our 37 trillion cells in our body and then all the foreign cells that are riding along with you and your microbiome have a relationship with the environment. If you ask our native friends, they'd say, we've known that forever. The Western folks are like, we finally proved that mathematically. So the two worlds meet. So this is me and my daughter and teaching her how to surf, and we went snowboarding a couple weeks ago, and it's just really fun to bring back those lived experiences to the next generation. What if you went upstream on mental health? So I'm showing new material. This is about to come out, and we're going to give it to any kid at Fort Lois that wants it. And this is a mental health resiliency product called Scout. And the way that Scout works is it works on youth level. You sketch your feelings. You can put sound to feelings. You can write your feelings. And then we connect youth to clinically proven experiences that will help them through anxiety, through depression. Technically, it's non-clinical. That allows us to do a lot more. And this is about to come out next month. And it's at Scout at sutterhealth.org. It's $30 for 12 weeks, but we're going to have FLC have access to that for the next year or so. So 7 things I wish someone told me at Fort Lewis College. So I ended up here. One is, I find this incredibly reassuring. This is from Stutz. There's a great documentary from Jonah Hill and his therapist. It's awesome. And in this documentary, he talks about for every person in the world, it's the human condition, that there's fear, there's uncertainty, and there's constant work. Once you realize that, I spent 10 years, 20 years trying to figure out there must be an easier way. And it's got to be easier if you do it that way. And to some degree, that's true. There are various hacks, but at the end of the day, it's full of fear, it's full of uncertainty, and it's constant work. So now when I'm feeling the feeling of this feels like it's really hard, I know now that I'm in the process, that that's just part of the process. And I wish someone had told me that a lot earlier, because I felt like I must be doing it wrong. This seems harder for me. And so I think there's an opportunity. That same documentary talks about part X. We all have a part X. We talk about headwinds for different populations, which is very true. But the biggest headwind anyone ever feels is the one in their own head. You're the worst critic, for sure. You're the one beating yourself. And we all do it, and I do it. I did it making this talk. I did it 10 minutes ago thinking like, oh, I think it's off topic. But if you know that's true, you're just like, oh, cool, there's part X. There it is. And it's always going to be there. It doesn't go away. And all of us have a part X. So the most successful people in the world, however you define that, has that part X too. And I found that helpful, and I wish someone had told me that. If you don't design it, whether that's FLC staff or students or anybody else, someone else right now is obsessing to make you part of their design. So whether that's social media or anything else, in social media, if you've seen Social Dilemma, you're the product. Your attention is being sold for advertising dollars. You're the product. And one social media company is not thinking about the other 10 social media companies and how in the collection now of 50 apps, you're in there for hours a day, hours and hours and hours. We do know from a mental health perspective, it's been proven now, that if you're a creator on social media, that's much better for your mental health than just being a consumer of social media. So people are going to use social media. We're not going to stop them. I use social media. Most adults will use social media. Be a creator on social media, not just a consumer of the doom scrolling and the constant comparison. In the history of the world, there's never been a better time to build your vision. I say this because, especially for Durango, before in 1996, to do what happened for me, there was no option but to move out and to find, opportunity and figure that out. That's not to say there weren't, but there are more opportunities outside the region at the time. In this day and age, you could connect to anyone in the world. You can find them. You can figure out what it is. That startup community, the things that I've been learning about what's happening in Durango, it can all be done here now. So there's the opportunity to live in the place and be in the place and still do some of the biggest visionary work ever. You only have 90 if you're lucky. So Tim Urban writes a great blog called Wait But Why, and he did this great visualization of 90 circles. So, if you're through a little bit of those, I've talked about coming to Durango. I'm 49. This is how many of the circles that I've used. And so far, I've been coming through Durango maybe once every 7 years. And if I keep that up, I'm only coming to Durango maybe 4 or 5 more times. And you think about it really differently. You see the majority of your parents before you're 18. If you think about the number of winters you have left in Durango, there's not that many. To make this non-discouraging, the bigger numbers would be you have 4,000 weeks in your career, and you have something like 80,000 hours. So the question is like, how are you going to use that time? How do you want to use that time? What we see now in the world is people are going to pivot 5, 6, 7 times, multiple times, and do multiple things many times over, reinventing themselves many times over. Imposter syndrome is real and it's everywhere. Everyone feels like an imposter. It just is just the thing. So that helped. Next one was ask. The last number of jobs I've had weren't jobs. They're not posted anywhere. There's no such thing. Like this current job title, Chief Design and Innovation Officer, we came up with that. When I went to One Medical and I met up with the founder, Tom Lee, we sat down for an hour and we discussed what we could do. And he goes, what do you think we should call that? And I was like, I don't know. What about VP of Design? And he goes, okay, can you start in a couple of weeks? If you don't ask, If you ask, you're no worse off than you were before you asked. So just ask. When I went to leave One Medical to go to a different startup, I went for a walk with the same guy, Tom Lee, good really, really powerful serial entrepreneur. And he goes, why do you think so binary? Why would you have to leave this company to go to the next one? I was like, what do you mean? He goes, why don't you stay on 20% and then do the startup the other part of the time? I was like, can I do that? He goes, yeah, let's do it. So I was at One Medical 1 day a week and still helping another company get started. So you have to just ask for it and do it. And I think a lot of students, I'd love for them to know that. Success is doing whatever possible to love the process versus the outcome. This is kind of a heavy way to say it. But it's all about, we all experience that perfect snapshot. I can tell a few from Durango, being on the three-peat championship team with Keith Darner and being alongside Todd Wells. That was a snapshot. I'll remember that day for the rest of my life. It was awesome. And then what happened afterwards, I won't tell him, Keith, what really happened. But these are memories for a lifetime, and it's the perfect snapshot. And then you spend so much of your time trying to recreate the snapshot because you think that you could, like, oh, if it felt like that, then what if you did that full time? There's no such thing. You're coming in and out of the snapshots. So the goal is to like the process. If you like the process, and talking to Todd Wells yesterday, he said, it's like, oh, aren't you just so happy that you don't have to train like you used to? He goes, I love training. It's like, because he loves the process. He loves the process. The outcome is you go to the Olympics. But unless you love the process, you're not going to the Olympics, right? And you definitely don't do it 3 times. So loving however you need to love the process, that doesn't mean that the process is always fun, but it means you got to like it. This is the scariest thing to me on a college campus. 70% of adults don't like their job. So we're prepping people to go in a world that people don't like. So to me, I find this actually really empowering. It's like, fine, if you guys don't like your jobs, we're going to make some up that are different. And I think the youth of today are really empowered by this to be purpose-built and get after it. If you're in this room, you already won. You guys are at Fort Lewis College. I mean, this is awesome. And if you've arrived at this moment in time, there's been a lot of people that helped make this happen, whether that was free tuition for coming here, whether it's how you tripped in. I realized that Durango and Fort Lewis College had a lot of people that I'll never remember that were doing a lot of things to support the ecosystem, to make the possibilities present themselves for the things that, frankly, you took for granted, like the fact that there was a cycling team, like the fact that there was a study abroad program in France, like the fact that there was a curriculum for you to follow. So if you're in this room, you've already won, whether you're on the staff or the student body, and now it's about how do you use that platform. We call it the gap in the gain. It's not about what you don't have, it's about what you've already gained. So to summarize the talk, this is everything we covered. Thank you guys for coming today. It's really fun to be back here in Durango, and I appreciate all that helped this trip come to be. And from here, we can take on some questions or comments or thoughts or criticisms. I'm open to that. I didn't see a lot of eye rolls, but if you guys are critical, I'm okay with that. And obviously connect.